C-Suite Edge. I'm your host, John Light, founder and CEO of Sabretooth Recruiting, and today I'm joined by Nick Lampone. Nick, thanks so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me, John. Really appreciate it and excited to be here.
Outstanding. Now, you are what? Chief Strategy Officer, right?
That is
over
correct.
at Pine Valley Investment. Yeah, so you sit in a perch where a lot of people probably are jealous of. You've got tons of information at your fingertip. You're surrounded by extremely smart people. And, hey, we've talked a little bit. I'd put you in that class too, which just makes me great to have, for me, it's great to have you on the show because I love talking with people who know their domain and are very bright about it. But why don't you tell us a little bit more about your story, your background, and how you ended up at Pine Valley Investment and what you guys have going on?
Great. So I've been at Pine Valley Investments almost 5 years now. It's a registered investment advisory firm just outside of Philadelphia in Marlton, New Jersey. It's been a great operation here. Really some rapid growth, which has been awesome to witness and help bring to fruition. Previous to that, I was on the institutional side of the business as an institutional equity sales trader. Worked for a few firms, worked in Jersey City, New York, spent almost 17 years at Janney Montgomery Scott in Philadelphia. Last few I ran their equity sales trading desk and market making desk as well. So I think I have a little bit of a different perspective on the retail side of the business, the RIA side, than most people, because I was trained and grew up on the institutional side. So that's really what I try to bring, and PVI tries to bring, Pine Valley Investments, is bring that institutional experience to retail clients.
Interesting, because there's such a gap between what your standard run-of-the-mill average Joe retail investor can do versus what the big institutions can do. And it's a gap that's been really severe because of the technology deficit between the two and the capital deficit between the two. So I'd love to ask you some more about that and how you bring that to the table and maybe help people address it. But I think probably the bigger question on my mind is when you look at Pine Valley Investments and you look at what you guys do, what's the biggest issue or biggest problem you all solve for your clients?
Well, it's bringing personalized wealth solutions to people, whether it's an individual, a family, a business, whatever it may be, but it's customizing to each client's needs. I think sometimes advisors, they're excellent salesmen. They can go out, they can convert clients, they can get those assets in the door. They could throw them, maybe they have 3, 4, 5 buckets. They throw them into one of the 5 buckets. Your conservative, your growth, depending on their age, they throw them in the bucket, and then they go out looking to convert the next client. I think what's a little bit unique to our side is we handle all of the investments internally here. Now, we do use outside advisors for certain products, but we're structuring all the investment strategies internally, not outsourcing anything there. So I think that's what's a little bit different. My background is a sales trader, and was the perfect acronym. I was a salesman covering accounts, but I was also a trader. So it was 7:30 to 4:30 trading stocks all day, and then you were a salesman, sometimes during the day, but then entertaining clients or, having office visits, et cetera, during the day or after hours. So it really was a little bit of both. So I think what we're doing here at Pine Valley Investments really meshes, and there's a true need for that. The one other thing I would say is, I write a note every day. It's called the Morning Core. I can tell people how to find it later, but the core stands for charts, observations, reads, etc. I really try, sometimes advisors try to make things more complex than they need to be to sound smarter and impress people. The whole purpose of my Morning Core is, what do I think's happening with the market? Here are the headlines of the day, and here are some economic and financial charts as well. I always say my mom reads it and hedge fund managers read it. So there's something in there for everyone, but it's not dumbing it down, but it's just making it easily digestible for regular people to understand what's going on in the market. And that's what we try to do here as well. Make things easy to understand, find out their financial goals, what they're looking to do, whether it's buy a house, retire, start a business, sell a business, and help manage them through those goals to know they're going to be set up properly to accomplish what they're looking to do.
Man, I tell you what, one thing that struck me in our initial conversation coming into this, and now you said it again, you've touched on it again. It really sounds like you guys try to meet people where they're at. You know, and that's not an idiom referring to, I need to come to the, the wrong side of the railroad tracks in your town or something. I mean, you are in New Jersey. Let's just be honest here. There's some wrong side of the tracks in New Jersey, just like there is in Philly and some other places. But I guess my point is that sometimes you got to talk someone's language, and it's not dumbing it down. It's not simplifying it. I think we don't use the term a lot anymore, but layman. You're getting in where someone is, understanding where they're at, and being able to give them information to help make a decision that is, to your point, digestible where they're at. You don't need them to go get a 2-year master's in finance in order to understand what you're sharing and informing them on. I think that's, by the way, simple, effective, brilliant, because there's not enough of that going on in the world.
That's exactly right. I mean, I'll give you a perfect example. Recent client is a widow. Husband passes away unexpectedly. Very sad situation. He handled all the finances. She never paid a bill, never did a budget, never did anything. So it's okay. It's not only the financial side of, okay, what was your husband's pension? What was his retirement plan? Investing that accordingly, but it's the basics. Okay, how much money do I have coming in every month? What are our bills like? It's sitting down, it's using budgeting software that's easy to digest visually for someone like that. Okay, here's what I have coming in, here's what's going out. Where can I save a little bit more? Am I in good shape? Do I need to save more? Just presenting that, okay, you get that straight, and it's, all right, here's where you're at, here's what you're making. Now it's, okay, do you need insurance? The husband has insurance, she doesn't have insurance. There's kids involved. What do we need to take care of there? What does everything look like? So it's, you talk about meeting them where they're at, it's, you're in an unexpected situation that's very sad, but that's a real world example of walking someone through who doesn't know anything about finance and then coming out the other side and feeling very comfortable. Okay, I can live my life. I know what's happening. Oh, and by the way, I'm 50 years old. If I stay on track, I can retire in 15 years, and I have a general sense of what my income's going to be when I retire. So it's those real world examples and actually helping people that's the most satisfying part of the job.
Yeah, well, let me tell you, meeting people where they're at, sometimes you meet people in unpleasant circumstances. Speaking from someone who's a widower, and then I turned around and I got married again to another cancer widow. We've kind of been through the trauma of coming out the other side of these events, and let's just say the brain doesn't always work as efficiently as it did on the front side when you're on the back side of it. Because you've had your identity ripped to shreds. You've had your life, your habits, your patterns just torn apart, and there's no putting them back together again the way they were. And so somebody who's willing to come in, take something that can be very complicated and very personal. I think one of the scary things to do when you sit down and talk investment manager, or you talk to a financial advisor, or you sit down with your RIA, and you're, in a sense, pardon me for putting it this way, you're kind of getting naked. You're putting someone else in a position of judging your financial decisions that you made earlier in life or you've made today and where it's put you. And that's got to be stressful. It's like when you go get a mortgage or a loan of some kind. Well, I need your social security number. We're going to pull a tri-merge on your credit. By the way, we're going to see if you do this, and blah, blah. And next thing you know, it's like, I don't know this person, yet they know so much about me. And so
there's a trust factor involved. That's what it is. I mean, it really is about building trust and John, you know it going through that situation. I can't even imagine how difficult it is. You know, you're dealing with all the emotional trauma of everything, but then there's the real life. I actually have to live next week, next month, and I really need to figure out the next 5, 10, 15 years of my life and paying for kids' college or high school or whatever it may be, getting that straight as well. So I can only imagine how much it is to handle at one time. And it's, if you could deal with someone you trust that knows what they're doing and can explain it in an easy to understand manner, I think that's where advisors can really provide value.
Yeah, absolutely. And you'd mentioned something previously about planning for milestones and planning around milestones. Not everybody has a neat plan that times out well for life. I mean, right now, for example, a lot of people are having trouble selling homes if they're trying to sell them. A lot of people are waiting to buy them, even though maybe my life plan is I was going to buy a home this year. And they may not feel comfortable doing it or confident doing it, or they may not be able to. Job market's kind of wonky for a lot of folks. So I'm curious, when you engage with people and they come up with a hiccup or a speed bump that discombobulates that next step in the plan or the next milestone, what do you think is the right way or the right process by which to give them the help or the boost, the assistance they need to get on track?
It's just the longer you've worked with a client, the easier it is, because we're always planning for that downside. All right, where's your emergency fund? 6 months, a year.
Right.
Anything catastrophic happens, we know we have this piece of money that can fund you for the next year. But everybody talks about financial plans, and they're great in theory. And hey, if I have X amount of money, your money's supposed to double every 7 to 10 years, in a 60-40 portfolio. That looks great on paper until 2008 happened, 2008, great financial crisis, or COVID hits. So when someone gets a hiccup, it's running through those scenarios. Okay, you have enough money here to live, to withstand that. Here's how it's going to impact 5, 10 years down the line. And once you get through this speed bump in the road, this is what we want to do to get you back on track. Once you get on your feet again, we'll save a little bit more money. Here's how it will flow in, and just setting that plan to make them feel more comfortable and understand the world isn't ending. I can live. Now, depending on what happens, it may really impact your retirement or not. But knowing that and giving them that comfort to know, hey, here are the scenarios, here's what it might look like, really helps people understand exactly the situation they're in, so they're not feeling like true catastrophe and a hurricane just happened. It might be just a long rainstorm versus a hurricane coming through your town.
Well, got experience with both.
Oh man, that's awful.
Where I live, one of the things I think that's, it could be intimidating, right? Is you sit down and you start talking, and you and I pre-show were chatting a little bit about derivatives and how, and I made a comment that, man, if you were in school, instead of handing you a book explaining derivatives in your finance course, they ought to give you a Jenga game, a Jenga tower, and that way you'd really understand, if you pull this out of here, here's what happens, and so on and so forth. How do you, not that it's something you would recommend to many clients or I don't know, but how on earth would you simplify that for someone who just doesn't have the educational background or experience or sophistication to dive into it? Again, the layman's terms, how complicated the financial markets really are, because I don't think people understand. You see the stock indices, you look at the Dow Jones, and what is that, 30 companies?
Yep.
It's not thousands of companies. I think people have this idea when they look at this, this represents the entire market. It doesn't.
That's it. I mean, so I always tell clients, never look at the Dow Jones. It's only 30 stocks. It's not representative of anything. We look at the S&P 500 for the most part, but again, that's only 500 companies, and it's all U.S. large cap stocks. There are a million other markets out there other than that for diversification. But what I would say for the options and derivatives, Options are really used for insurance. Everybody buys insurance for their house, their car, whatever it may be, life insurance, whether it's term, etc. We look at options as insurance, buying insurance to protect your portfolio to the downside. I'm sure there are a lot of young people watching TikTok videos or Instagram that think of options in a different way, where they're buying way out of the money call options. And we saw the GameStop and meme frenzy out there. And a lot of those people lost a lot of money because they didn't understand the risk they were taking, which goes back to what we talk about here all the time. Every conversation with every client, they get tired of hearing me say it, risk-adjusted returns. How much risk are you willing to take to generate a certain return? You know, a lot of times we'll get clients to say, yeah, but I have this other fund and it's doing way better than you. Okay, send over the portfolio. And then you easily spell it out. Yes, we can generate that return too, but are you willing to take the loss like we saw in 2022 or when COVID hits and the market's down, the S&P's down 34%, this portfolio is going to be down 50. And it's just getting clients to understand there is risk taken. Obviously, that's why we always talk about time horizons in investing. The longer your time horizon, the better chance you have of making money. You know, I present at conferences on a somewhat regular basis, and the one thing I always say is the stock market's the exact opposite of the casino. What does a casino want you to do? They want you to stay in there and gamble as long as you can, as long as they can keep you in there. That's the reason there's no windows in there. It's tough to have an exit. If they keep you trapped in there, they know you're going to lose and they're going to win.
Yeah.
The stock market's the exact opposite. The longer you're in, your odds increase exponentially. You know, on any one day, you invest one day, 52% of the time, you're going to win. 48% of the time you're going to lose. If you have a 10-year time horizon, your odds go up to making money 98% of the time on average.
Oh, wow.
So we always talk about time horizons. And there are people that have multi-stage time horizons. All right, I want to buy a house in 5 years, but I also want to save for retirement. And then we sit down and plan with them accordingly. Okay, here's how much you could afford, where interest rates are now. This is where you should be looking. Oh, but also make sure you're maxing out your 401k, getting your company match. If you work for a publicly traded company, you're getting those options, stock options. Okay, how do they vest, et cetera. So it's just walking them through that process, again, so that they understand.
Awesome. Nick, I know, I have no doubt in my mind, we could be talking a long time about this, and it's something that touches everybody. Even if people aren't seeking it out, I think it's really important. So if someone wanted to connect with you in Pine Valley Investments and get brought up to speed on financial markets, opportunities, and risks, what's the best way for them to find you?
So they can go to Pine Valley Investments, and you could click on, there's an About feature there. Subscribe to my daily newsletter, and then at that point I would reach out to them as well. So I would encourage anyone, even if you don't need an advisor, subscribe to the Morning Core. It comes out every weekday morning. It's 5 minutes to know what's going on in financial markets and to have a little bit of understanding of what's happening. And I think, you know, the other thing is, and we deal a lot with, it's behavioral finance, fear of losses. You know, you talked about that. You know, a loss feels twice as bad as a gain. So the more educated you are, the less fearful you are. Because I think, you know, especially now, you know, I've used the term for the last 2 months, we're drowning in noise with tariffs and the Middle East situation in Ukraine, et cetera. So I think the more informed you are, the less fear you have, and that allows us to plan accordingly, and I think it helps investors as well.
Yeah, I think it helps you make better decisions, definitely. And for folks who want to learn more, Nick and I are connected on LinkedIn, and I'm always happy to facilitate an introduction. But like you said, you can subscribe to his newsletter, Core, at pinevalleyinvestments.com. So go to pinevalleyinvestments.com, go to the About page, find Nick, and tell him, hey, I need my morning cup of core every day, and I think you'll get a great response. Nick, thanks so much for joining me today.
Thanks, John. Really appreciate it.